there wasn't a lot of time to think about what we were going to do. Um, people right away, some people were worried about not being able to receive the sacraments. Um, and actually, to be honest, I remember looking at social media and I saw a priest who was, hearing confessions. There was a picture of a priest like with a car and sitting, and he was just sitting outside, and it just kind of got to me. My thought was confession was one of the easiest things we could offer still. We were not allowed to have public masses when they got to that point. Um, so of course we did masses, live stream. I was doing masses in first in my church and then in my the chapel of my rectory because we had sound problems. It was too echoey. Most priests weren't prepared. Some parishes may have had cameras and stuff set up for live stream masses before this, but 99% of churches probably didn't. So a lot of priests were just sort of scrambling to be able to produce an online mass. And so I was, of course, doing that. I was blessed to have a seminarian who, Jeff Filipski, who was the Mundelein, had to have everyone leave campus. And so the vocation director called me and I said, yeah, I have a place for someone. And so that was a godsend to have him help me and serve at Mass and just help me during that time. But confessions was one of the easiest things I think to do because you go outside and I set up a little station outside. Of course, there was all this concern about people coming into the building and touching the handles of the doors and all of that. So I thought the best thing would be to do is just have a little put a screen up and a chair, and I put a cone for the people to stay pretty far away, and they could drive up and get out of their car and make their confession. And that was huge because a lot of dioceses, a lot of parishes were not offering confession. Our diocese never said that we couldn't, and I even checked with my bishop, and I told him what I was doing, and he said that was fine. So that was just a great thing to offer people because people at that time during the pandemic, people were really people were in some cases being laid off. They were stuck at home. There was great anxiety about what was going on, about not being able to come to Mass. And so, of course, when you're at home, too, there's new temptations when you don't have your normal routine for some people. So people were falling into sin, and they needed the sacraments. They needed confession, and it was a great help, I think, for them just to know that someone was there from the church. The more I think about this, the more social media kind of helped, I think, a lot of priests. I'm in a Facebook group that's just for priests, and then I was actually in a group that was created for priests. It was something like quarantine solutions for priests or something, and it was good because we just heard other priests talking about what they're going to do, um, and so one priest mentioned, well, there's priests mentioning doing a Eucharistic procession, so I decided. I decided to just to do a procession with the Blessed Sacrament. I used to be at St. Gall Catholic Parish in Elburn, and the town of Elburn. I've since moved. I moved in July, the beginning of July. I moved to a new parish. But the town of Elburn is, it's about 6,000 people. It's not a huge town at all, but for that reason, I looked at the map and I considered, okay, how can I bring the Blessed Sacrament through this town? And I kind of drew a map, and I showed it to my seminarian, to Jeff Filipski, who was taking finals and stuff for Mundelein, and he's very good. He's like an engineer. He's like, well, Father, this is okay, because I wanted to kind of go around the town, but he said, well, you're walking through a lot of areas that don't have a lot of houses, so you're not going to necessarily, maximize who gets to see the Blessed Sacrament and all that. So I did a sort of a figure eight in a couple areas of my town, but honestly, and I showed it to him. I said, we're going to do this. You up for this? And he said, yeah. But I think it ended up being about 6 miles. It was a long course, and it was really, I would look at that as one of my top 10 greatest days in my priesthood, because it was so beautiful to, basically, I just had the Blessed Sacrament. I had the Blessed Sacrament in a ciborium. I didn't want to come with the monstrance, because you really should have, a certain number of candles and all that stuff, and a canopy. I didn't, this was going to be very simple. I held the Blessed Sacrament in the ciborium, and Seminarian Jeff went ahead with a candle, with a sanctuary lamp, and we just walked through. And I told people before, I said, as we walk through, this is our route. And I also had parishioners in a car with Facebook Live video streaming it. And I said, as we come by, we're just going to stop, and maybe, you can have little signs that have Eucharistic slogans, like, the bread of life, or, may Jesus be praised in the Blessed Sacrament, something like that. I kind of understood that from Rome. They would do Eucharistic processions on Corpus Christi, and you go through Rome, and the people would have like signs about their faith in the Eucharist. So I said, bring a sign, my Lord and my God, things like that. And people came out, and I would stop, and as they were there, I would just stop with the Blessed Sacrament in their presence, and they would just worship. And the amazing thing about that is we went through the town, we went through subdivisions, and you had neighbors coming out, people on their yard, and just dropping to their knees in the street, on Main Street. They didn't care if non-Catholics saw them and said, what is going on? Because I know some people were probably like, what the heck is going on with this priest in a cassock surplice and the stole? But what is going on, But they just, and people were crying. People were in tears because they had been, at that point, by Palm Sunday, they had not, they'd been not able to receive Holy Communion for some weeks then at that point, and during the holiest week of the year too, of course. And so, and they also had some of the kids made little paper palm branches and waved them, So I thought, as Palm Sunday, I thought, well, this is like our Lord coming into Jerusalem. Our Lord is passing through Elburn, and it was a great day. I think Jeff and I both got sunburned, and we were tired by the end of it, but it was wonderful, and it was so beautiful. Even non-Catholics kind of saw us and said things. I don't think they understood what we were doing, but they knew that it was about Jesus, and they thanked us for coming through their street, their town. Definitely, the times are changing, because they were a lot worse back in April. It was very terrible when we couldn't have public mass. Then we had it in small numbers and all that. But I think the difficult thing is, well, first of all, even having to say no to people. I had people that we were not allowed to bring Holy Communion to the homebound at a certain point. And people would ask me, and as a priest, you never want to say no to people who ask for something, right? Probably the hardest thing, I would say, was not being able to get into the hospitals for people. Our bishop in Rockford, appointed certain priests in each deanery to be COVID priests who would anoint people who had COVID when called. And I was one of them, but I never had a call from a hospital. Other priests did. I didn't in the area I was at. And a couple times I had a priest who knew somebody who had COVID who tried to call me, and I would go to the hospital and I couldn't get in. And I understand that the doctors and nurses, they have to protect the hospital. I understand that. But that was the hardest thing, is when you know someone is dying and they can't have a priest. So that was very difficult. And then I also think, just hearing in the confessions, there's so much, there was a lot of anger. A lot of people felt abandoned, even when you tried to tell them the church is with you. It's just hard when you can't have access to the sacraments and everything. That hits people really hard. And so that was tough, I think also for a lot of priests, we've not had a lot of contact with each other. So some priests have been kind of isolated through this. I mean, that's been difficult too, is you're just not used to having the things that help you in your support of your ministry. So priests really have had to reach out to each other and kind of show that support. I think positive fruits were, like, right away at the beginning of the pandemic we talked about. I basically focused on two things. I said the act of contrition and an act of spiritual communion. Those are your right hook and your left hook. Those are your two great spiritual weapons. Of course, I was making confession available. Some places people couldn't get to confession, and so we had to teach them as best we can, make a good act of contrition. There's still ways you can take care of your soul. Um, and then spiritual communion, something that I know myself, I didn't really ever talk about that much with people. I mean, maybe with the homebound you would talk about it, um, but that was a thing we talked about. We talked about a lot about praying, making your home a domestic, really making it a domestic church, making it a place of prayer. Um, Having an altar, a little prayer corner in your home, and really praying in your home. Even if you can't get to church, you can pray at home. So some of these basic things, that was, I think, a good way to emphasize it. And of course, I think the faithful, um, definitely a lot of people were shaken out of their uh, any way in which they took for granted the sacraments. In the United States, we've had it pretty easy. Some countries, some cultures suffer under persecution. It's much harder to be a Catholic, to live the Catholic faith in some countries, and we have it pretty. We have to admit, we have it pretty easy. We've had it pretty easy for quite some time in the United States, and so then we had that experience of, okay, this is, all those things that you maybe take for granted. Going to mass, having all these options. You can choose whatever mass time you want. You can jump around to different parishes if you like something else somewhere else. All that stuff was taken away. So I think hopefully it got a lot of people to just really focus on how essential the sacraments are, how essential their faith is. And so I think there's a lot that we can build on. I think people helped each other. I think neighbors helped each other. And there was some reaching out there, which is always good for people. As a priest, we never were prepared we never took Pandemic 101. We never took Pandemic Ministry 101. I never in my life could have envisioned what happened. I just never did. Never thought about it. So for me as a priest, how did that affect me? I mean, I think it's very similar to what the faithful went through. I appreciated the power of the priesthood in a new way. When you realize that just simply showing up to hear a confession, um, making yourself present with, of course, the Blessed Sacrament, the real presence, but being, as a priest, being the one who carries the Blessed Sacrament to somebody, it's powerful. And I think even people just seeing a priest outside at that time, like walking in their street, was a reminder of the church. So that whole idea that we believe we are, as a priest, we're an icon of Christ, we're an icon of the church. That was very palpable, I thought, during the pandemic, and it just made me realize that we have to go reach out to people, especially in a time of crisis. People can't. The church can't become invisible to people in a crisis. The church has to go out and reach out and find the faithful and try to console them and strengthen them and nourish them. So it was a big boon. I don't know. It was a big boon for my own priesthood. Just that sense of a crisis comes up and you have to answer it. From my perspective as a priest, I think there was a lot of grace that was happening during this time. And again, part of it's because as a priest you hear confessions, so you see people's interior. You get an insight into people's interior life and what they're going through. And so there was a lot of grace that was happening during even the shutdown. And I think that grace is going to bear fruit as we go forward. But we just have to trust the Lord and just not hope. Hope is the one thing I always tell people about, is just to pray the act of hope. When there's temptations to despair, just keep asking the Lord to give you an increase in the virtue of hope.